Thank you so much, everyone, for this fabulous opportunity to be with you. I really enjoy sharing the gifts that God has given me. And I've been a Christian counselor for over 30 years now, and I've heard many, many stories. I've learned many, many of the wiles of the enemy. I just finished my first book. Now I'm going to read another one. It was a great experience. We come from a generation now that doesn't read anymore, so I'm going to be videoing a lot of my talks from now on because I can't get my clients to read. But I have learned many, many of these wiles of the enemy, and I try to share this with my clients every day because I believe if we learn these tricks, these techniques, that we will be so much wiser. We'll be able to fight back in a much more powerful way. We'll be able to gain such a sense of strength. We can launch into victory much, much easier when we understand the attack. Some of the ways that God has shown me, I'm going to share with you. Some of them are very, very simple that you would never even imagine is taking place. So the first principle is that the enemy is going to use the closest people to you to hurt you. He will hurt, first of all, being yourself, and then it's going to be those you least expect. And so as I talk tonight, you have to follow that principle that you will be surprised to learn that you are very, very responsible for hurting the people closest to you, not in your own intention. Take that right from the beginning. This is you are being tricked. And so I want to share with you, how are we all being tricked? This is nothing you intend. Make that clear from the beginning. It is a way that the enemy can use what's called a network of emotions. God has designed a network in each of us that we send emotions to each other. Now this was designed to be a means of sending blessings to each other. We send emotions of joy, of peace, of encouragement, of affirmation to our wives, our husbands, to our children, to those who are closest to us. It was designed to send wonderful affirmations. What we don't realize is that we send affirmations, but God amplifies them. God gives an increase to those blessings. So when you speak a word of blessing over your child, God immediately amplifies it 10 times, because God increases it 10 times. You say that blessing again, it grows to 100. And then it grows to 1,000. And it grows so exponentially, it's amazing how fast your children can be blessed, your grandchildren, your spouses. It's an amazing, amazing gift that God has given us that we unfortunately do not use often enough. Instead, we find ourselves cursing each other. We say negative things to each other. We think negative thoughts. Now, the point of this talk is going to be that when we think thoughts, they are transmitted. Because there are waves that God designed. That's how we send these emotions. It's not magic. It's not just a nice thought. There is actually, in quantum physics, you can study that there are waves that our brain sends out that carry thoughts. It is called a network. Well, the enemy gets on that network just as well as God intended. Just like on the internet, this internet was designed to send beautiful things back and forth, and who got on it very quickly was all kinds of negative, you know what. And so those things are now dominating the internet, and they are dominating the airwaves. The same way we have to take control. So we want to learn how to take control of our thoughts, to take every thought captive. So actually in the beginning of a series of talks, I'm going to begin to share with you some methods of how the enemy does this. First of all, let's look at what is the enemy's goal, what is his principle. I took this from one of my favorite books. It's called The Screwtape Letters. Have any of you ever experienced this book? It's a great, great book. It's a story of a senior demon. It's a satire, but it's a great, great work of a senior demon named Screwtape, and he's teaching techniques to his nephew's Wormwood. And he is revealing many, many of the tricks of the enemy. But in the beginning, he's explaining to his nephew, these are the words he says. Now, in this, you have to understand, when he uses the word enemy, he's speaking about God. Right? The only thing that matters is the extent to which you separate the man from the enemy. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and out into the nothing. Murder is no better than cards if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. The techniques I'd like to teach you are completely invisible. You would never suspect them, but once you learn them, you will be able to move into victory in a much, much more quick rate. The first method that he uses is for every single person. I've been doing this, like I say, for over 30 years. No one has ever escaped this emotion. It comes up with every single person. That means not one of us in this room can escape from being used in this way. It's the emotion of jealousy. Now immediately you will say, like every one of my clients, they say, no, I don't have a jealous bone in my body. You don't understand. I'm not a jealous person. Okay, so let's clear up the definition of this word jealousy. What I'm referring to is wanting good things. It's not even wanting bad things. It's just, for our conversation, we're going to discuss it as wanting good things. Okay? I want to be in a good, loving relationship. I want a good family. I want a nice job. I want a wonderful wife. I want a great husband. I want children that are obedient. Right? These are all good things. We want things that are very good, and the enemy tries to find a way that we do not get them. So what the enemy uses is a technique called the law of attraction. How many have heard of that? It was made real popular in the book The Secret. That book is all about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction began in the Garden of Eden. That's how old this is. But they call it the New Age movement, but that's how old the New Age movement is. It's the theme, it's the main theme of the New Age movement, is this law of attraction. The way this works is, the enemy's principle is that if you send out good vibrations, you send out positive thoughts out into the universe. If you focus on what? The creation rather than the creator, you will attract this to yourself. So if you remember this principle, you'll understand everything I'm talking about tonight. That's a very, very important principle. Really, he convinces us that if you stay focused on this thing, or this relationship, or this good job, or whatever, just stay focused on it. His principle is you need to keep thinking about it, otherwise you're going to forget about it, and you're going to lose interest, and it's never going to happen. So he uses many techniques to trick us into believing, thinking about this and staying about, watching maybe this other friend who has this great job, staying focused on him is going to bring me a good job. It will keep me searching, it will keep me wanting it, it will keep me desiring it, and eventually it will come my way. This doesn't work. The truth is, this principle doesn't work. But his goal, as I said in the beginning from C.S. Lewis, his goal is to get us away from God. His purpose is to get us as much as possible away from the Creator, focused on the creation. Anything he can do to take our mind off of God. Anything. He stops at nothing to distract us from God, and there's many, many techniques. So his first very, very powerful method is this one of jealousy. He sees something that you want, and he only chooses things that are good, because he wants you to go after it. So let's say you want something wonderful. His method is you focus on that, as I said, and you will attract it to yourself. In reality, the principle is God is saying, I want you to see wonderful things, and I want you to desire them. It's called godly desire. We are allowed to have godly desire. So when I work with my clients, we have to switch from this mode of sin, because jealousy turns into sin. Because now I'm focused on the creation rather than the Creator, right? So this has now become sin. I'm focused on the stars. They're the ones that are going to give me my insights, my wisdom, my guidance, instead of going to God saying, how about you send me the Holy Spirit to give me guidance and wisdom? We search for everything all over the planet, anything but We'll look to crystals for power and energy instead of looking to the source of power in the universe. So his goal is to get us away from creator onto creation. So let's look at what really happens when we try his technique. So what happens when, let's start with something very simple, but you can apply to anything. Everyone pick out something that they've really, really wanted. And my question to you is, what happened when you didn't get it? So Johnny is told by his dad that he is going to have a bicycle on the porch this Saturday. If he's good this week, when he gets up on Saturday morning, there's going to be a bicycle on that porch. His dad's going to do his best effort to get that bike there. So Johnny waits all week, he's excited, he's anticipated, and Saturday comes and there's no bicycle. What emotions does he start to feel? Well, his first emotion is he's going to feel disappointed, right? During the week, he sees the bicycle doesn't show up, still even during the week. He begins to feel sad. Next Saturday comes, maybe this Saturday the bike will be there. And we can interpret this any way you want. Maybe the spouse I'm looking for will show up next week. Maybe the job I'm hoping for will come through next week. If it doesn't come through, a week goes by, the second week goes by, I'm feeling let down. Then time goes by, second week, third week, now I begin to feel frustrated. It was supposed to be here by now. Something's wrong. What's wrong? It was supposed to be here. Now as time goes on, it's still not showing up, whatever this thing in your life is that you've wanted. Let's say it's the bicycle. Now I begin to get angry. How come Joey gets one and I don't? How come all my friends have a bicycle and I don't? How come everybody has a nice house and I live in this less than nice house? Now I begin to be what? Resentful. Now the emotion of resentfulness sets in. More time goes by, I begin to get discouraged, and here's where it begins to take hold. Now the enemy has got his stronghold into you. You begin to feel rejected. There must be something wrong with me. These are steps that I've studied for over 20, 30 years. I've watched people and I've listened to them. Tell me how you felt when you didn't get it, when you stayed focused. And they tell me, and I've studied these for years, and this is the pattern that I've seen over and over again that they fall through. So now they're at a point of feeling rejected. Now there must be something wrong with me. Everyone else has one, but I don't. All my friends have a nice house, I don't. All my friends have a nice car, I don't. It must be me. Now is when it really sets in. I begin to feel hopeless, I'm depressed, and I'm shut down. Most of the clients that come to me, when I see them, they're in that state of depressed and shut down. And we go back and I help them realize this is one of the main ways that they got there, was through this emotion of jealousy, of wanting something the wrong way. And so they say, well, how do I get it? What is the right way to achieve it? It's really very, very simple. So when we see something that you want, you are allowed to see it and to be inspired by it. When you see it, why am I inspired? I asked many, many people that seem to be amazed. They said, well, I don't know. I'm discouraged when I see them. I said, no, think about why should we be inspired when I see Frank has this great job and he hasn't even got a college degree like I've got. What is that? What could that mean? He said, well, maybe I could get one too. And I said, right, it's an inspiration. If you never saw a loving relationship, would you ever believe that the one exists, that I would be inspired to have my own loving? When I see one that inspires me that, yes, it is possible. God did design it right. He knew what he was doing. There is a way to have a loving relationship. So I see them, now remember this for the rest of your life. This is a simple technique. You see what that family, that person has, you're inspired by it, you immediately turn to God and you say, Lord, do you see what Frank has? How can you and I together have a relationship like that? And he says, now we've got something to talk about. All this time, you've been focused on Frank and his relationship. You've been focused on what he's had, and I couldn't break through. Because there's two camps. There's God's camp and there's the enemy camp. Most of us want to have one foot in one camp and one foot in the other. Most of us, I'm telling you. And even in secret ways, you've got one foot in the enemy camp. You're dabbling in something where you should not be, and you think it has no effect. The problem is, it immediately backs God away. He says, hey, as long as you've got one foot in that camp, and we know many biblical stories that we can prove that by, if you've got one foot in the enemy camp, I've got nothing to do with you. We know from the story of Ai that a man stole several bars of gold, and the entire Israeli camp suffered. It was under this ban of destruction because one man sinned. That means the whole camp was involved in the enemy camp. So if we dabble in something, we are inviting in the enemy. And so, as long as we are focused on the enemy's way of doing it, his method, we are not going to invite God to use his method. So I'm telling you, he gets very excited when we say, God, how can you and I together achieve this new job, this wonderful spouse, this family, children that are obedient? Can you imagine such a thing? And he said, now we've got something to talk about. Now together we are going to accomplish, because I want it more than you do. See, that's what we don't realize. We think we're asking for something so outlandish. Are you kidding? A wonderful family, a wonderful spouse, a wonderful good job, a nice home, loving children. He wants that more than you do. He will do headstands to get you what you want. The enemy's method doesn't work. I can prove it to you 1,000 times. Anyone who chooses that method will wind up exactly where he wants you. Not only will you never receive the gift that you want, but you wind up shut down and depressed, doing nothing, because you've lost all your zeal, and it's amazing how many of us are shut down in that state. He wants to keep us away from our gift and call, and he finds very, very clever ways to shut us down. As years went by, God began to show me an even more clever way of how this emotion is used. And this you will find, if you thought that was interesting, this is probably 10 times more fascinating. This God revealed to me, and I'm going to tell you how it happened. And I began to explore how real this is. And God began to show me one story after another after another. A woman came in, and she was extremely sad and depressed. And she said, I can't take it anymore. No matter how hard I try, I cannot get my father interested in my children. All I ever wanted was for my dad to be interested and play with my kids, and he just ignores them. He doesn't seem to be interested. He seems, no matter what I try, what I suggest, he just shows no interest. And she was so hurt. And she said, and what makes matters worse is that last night, I'm in the kitchen, and he lives out in the guest house, a little guest house on her property. She said, I was making dinner, and I was lonely. I was in there by myself. And so I called out to my dad, and I said, Dad, why don't you come in, have a glass of wine with me, and talk to me while I'm making dinner? His response was, you don't want to spend time with me. And he never came in. And she was devastated because she has invited him over. And this woman I've known for many years, and she really makes terrific attempts to show love to her father. I mean, she does anything he wants. She's very, very giving and gracious, does whatever he'd like to do. Really, really tries to have a relationship with her father. I'm going to show you the number one way that the enemy uses to destroy relationships, and you're the one who's doing it. He's using you to spoil what you want more than anything in your life. And it's brilliant. This is one of those things you have to say, you know what, Satan, you are really clever. But now, too bad we have the Holy Spirit, because he just revealed what's going on. So she came in, and I said, why don't let's pray, and let's see if there are any emotions that you are sending out that may be influencing him in some way. Now remember, everything I talked to you about is about using the principle. We send out emotions that were designed to be positive emotions, but we send out lots of negative ones, and the enemy is waiting. He is prowling like a roaring lion, waiting for someone to devour. And this is what that scripture means. It means when you send out an emotion, the enemy is waiting to use it. He's waiting to screw with it. He's going to mess with you. He's going to use that emotion in ways that you can't even imagine he could use. He's going to turn it and he's going to twist it. Because only the theme is being transmitted with no details. So if I send you a theme of rejection, because my father rejected me, but I'm thinking about this theme of rejection, how my father rejected me. When I send out as a transmitter the emotion of rejection, you only get rejection. So now the enemy plays with that. What could he do with that? You could start thinking, well, I think my husband is rejecting me. I think I should reject him. He could do it any way he wants. So watch what he does with this emotion. The first emotion that came up was jealousy. And I said to her, what is it you're jealous about? And so we had to find a lie. A lie is a belief that I have come to take hold of. That I use the words always, never, everyone. Just, it makes it such an exaggeration. But we come to these points like, I'll always be sick. I'll never get a job. I'll never get well. I'll never find a loving relationship. These always, never, these things are a lie, and the enemy is waiting to use them against us. So her lie was, I will always be jealous of those people who have fathers who take an interest in their grandchildren and spend time with them. It was immediately revealed to her by the Holy Spirit. This emotion, she is radiating out. Who do you think was the first one who picks up that emotion? Her father. So I want you to picture this in the spirit realm. She really, really wants. Remember, this is why God said, take every thought captive. Talk to me about it. Don't go talking about everybody else in the neighborhood. Talk to me about what you want. Don't stay focused on it. So she's radiating this emotion. She keeps thinking she's following the enemy plan. If I keep thinking about a father that spends time with his grandchildren, then maybe mine will turn into that. Where did she, when she came in? Depressed and shut down. I'm telling you, it works. His method works. And so, this is in the spiritual realm. She sends out the message, Dad, I really want to spend time with you. Now he responded in the flesh and said, no you don't. You don't want to spend time with me. If you continue the thought in the spiritual realm, continue the sentence, it would have been, you want to spend time with one of those fathers. One of those fathers that spends time with their grandchildren. And he feels pushed away. He feels rejected. He feels pushed back. Now, how do I know this is true? Because I've tested it 100 times, 1,000 times. And many times I've had a chance to pray with the other person and found out that they actually did feel rejection from their loved one. So I've proven it over, because I pray with families most of the time. And so you get a chance to experience this is real. So the emotion he felt was, you don't want to spend time with me. You want one of those fathers. And it pushed him away. And he felt that rejection. And he felt it for years. So we broke this lie, and we broke a series of other emotions, negative emotions that she was feeling, that she was sending. He doesn't know anything about what we've done, right? All we did was stop the emotions that she was sending. Several weeks went by, and I said, why don't you, all your life you've wanted a relationship with your father. I have a suggestion. Now that we've broken this, God has gone ahead of us and is preparing his heart, because now you're working together. You said, God, how can we together get my father to be like that? And that's the prayer we did that day. So God began to work on his heart. And a few weeks later, she did the most radical thing. She bought him tickets to go to an Alaskan cruise, something they both wanted to do their whole life, but would never imagine doing it together. He has turned down everything she has ever asked to do. He has turned it down. Remember, because he's felt rejection ever since her kids were born. Just a coincidence, she says, Dad, I bought you these tickets. This man, just a coincidence, is so excited. He could not wait to go. They went on this trip and they had a blast. They had a time that they've never had. And all we did was stop those negative emotions that she was sending at them. She stopped pushing him away. Another man came in. He was devastated. He had a daughter that had been just a troublesome daughter for years. Had been involved in drugs, had been involved in a lot of promiscuous activities, and was just not the ideal child for this Christian man. He came in and said, you know, I've tried to reach out to this daughter over and over and over again. I've loved her. I've tried so hard to be a good father. You know, I'm a good Christian man. I want to be what's right for her, and I've encouraged her and loved her. I've supported her, and all she does is push me away. And I said, let's see what comes up. I said, why don't we pray and see if there's any emotions you're sending out that may be pushing her away. What do you think the first emotion was? Jealousy. This was the lie. I will always be jealous of those fathers who have normal, problem-free daughters. Imagine, now you're getting a feeling. She felt that for years. She felt that, you don't want me, Dad. You want one of those daughters, those ones that don't have any problems. And she backed away. We broke that lie. Things changed. Things amazingly changed. And this daughter began to receive the love from her father. She began to respond to the love of her father. And things were healed. This is very, very, very powerful, very real. This woman was 16 years old when her father went back to Mexico. And he left her in charge of everything. He just went back. He left his whole family, went back to Mexico and said, you're in charge. And this girl was devastated. But the thing is, when he left, he never told her anything like that he was proud of her, that he believed in her, and that she could handle all this responsibility. And without this encouragement and affirmation, she felt powerless to take on this responsibility. Months later, months go by, and she reaches out to him. She calls him, and she's trying to communicate with him about how much she misses him and how much she needs him, and how much she would just wish he would come back. And he seemed very cold and very distant, and just not responding at all. And she was flabbergasted. That she was so devastated that he said, how come I reached out in such a loving way? I spoke to him with real words of love and affection and trying to tell him how much I needed him, and how come he wouldn't come back? I said, let's see what we can find. So we began to pray, and I said, let's see what emotions you've been sending into him. What do you think the first emotion was?
Jealousy.
Jealousy. This was her lie, which she began, remember, the moment he left. Now, he was supposedly just going for a short trip, but she began to radiate this emotion in a huge way. I will always be jealous of those people who have fathers that tell their children how proud he is of them, how much he believes in them, and that he believes they can handle responsibility. Just some imaginary picture of a father out there. I said, you know any? No. But there must be someone out there somewhere who is like this. So she began to radiate to her father her picture of the father that she wanted, one that would have done this before he left. I mean, this is the most amazing story, that she actually was sending him this message that turned him away. So the more she thought about it, the further and further away she went. She also began to send many, many thoughts about. She began to think about how he didn't come and celebrate his birthday. He wouldn't come back to celebrate her birthday. Then she felt unimportant. Now the emotion of unimportance is now being sent to the father. The father feels like remember, only the theme. So now I'm sending the emotion of unimportance. So now the emotion of unimportance reaches the father. What do you think the enemy would do with that? He starts to feel insignificant. He starts to feel unimportant. Nobody misses me. Why should I come back? Then she felt powerless. She said, I will always believe I am powerless not to have many thoughts, how my father did not say that he would even try to come and celebrate my birthday. These thoughts of powerlessness. Now she's sending the emotion of powerless to her father. He's radiating the emotion of powerless. What could the enemy do in this situation? Make him feel powerless to come back. Powerless to have a relationship with his daughter that is rejecting him. And this is all going on in the spiritual realm. Then she sends the emotion of distrust. She distrusts her father because he did not understand how important it was that he come to her wedding. He didn't even come to her wedding. That's how rejected this man felt. Now see, the point is, you would say, well, now you're blaming it all on this girl. No, I'm saying the enemy is using it. It's one of the many ways. It's not the way. It was one of the ways. Because there were other children involved. Because she had other brothers and sisters, and I believe that each of them were sending out similar emotions. That father was railroaded with negative emotions when he left, and he never came back. They had no idea. So the enemy uses each of us in a way to play a part. Many people get offended when they say, so now it's all my fault. I said, no, you were being tricked. And it was just one of the tricks he was using. You were involved in a scheme to break up a relationship. All he wanted to do was break up a relationship. I'm going to quickly read a few other, these are many, many stories, just a lie of what people, see if you can identify with any of them. These are the things that have broken up relationships. One fellow said, I will always be jealous of those people who have fathers who give them direction on what they should do in life. A woman, I will always be jealous of those people who have fathers that stay with their family and do not leave. Another, I will always be jealous of those people who have stepfathers that teach them godly principles and prepare them for life. Another woman, I will always be jealous of those people who have fathers that do what they are supposed to do. I will always be jealous of those people who have friends that do what they're supposed to do. And I will always be jealous of those people who have employees that do what they're supposed to do. This one was one that began to grow. It began with her father. Now she adopted this lie for included everyone in her life. It went from her father to her friends, then to her employees. And when we talked about it, she said, that is exactly the way that I feel. I'm always looking at other people's employees. I'm saying, oh, if only I had employees like those. If only I had people, if only I had friends that actually did what they're supposed to do. Friends who do what they say they're going to do. How cool would that be, right? And so she said, I spend my whole day thinking about everybody but my father, my friends, and my employees. They're all getting ridiculous messages of rejection. She said, I know that my employees feel this every day because I'm always frustrated what they do wrong, and I've got some imaginary picture of this perfect employee doing everything right. And I said, do you know any? She says, nope. But there must be out there somewhere. Just by changing, I have to tell you, through each one of these stories, many of them are about the father. And relationships have been healed one after another after another. And all we did was work on our end to break the emotions that were being sent out. It's very, very real and very, very exciting. Very, very powerful. That when they stop feeling that rejection, what happens? Now you've got a chance to work. Before, you're speaking to a wall because they cannot hear you because the rejection is so much louder. A simple example. People say to me all the time, but I tell him, like this first woman said, but I told him clearly how much I love him, how much I need him, how much I enjoy spending time with him. How come he doesn't respond? I said, because in the spiritual realm is where all the action is really taking place. That's where the real messages are being sent, and it was designed that way. So I want you to imagine I'm singing a beautiful love song. I wrote the song, playing it on my guitar, and I'm singing this beautiful love song. And I'm singing to you about how much I love you, and you're just looking at me with this blank stare like, what's he talking about? Are you saying something? Are you talking to me? And I can't understand why you're not hearing what I'm singing. And then I step into the spiritual realm, and I see behind me a 10-foot tall, 3,000 watt amplifier blasting AC/DC at you. And I'm wondering why you cannot hear my beautiful words. This is the way it is in real life. I hear this every day. How come my wife can't see what I'm doing? How come my husband doesn't understand how much I do for him? Right? Because the other message being sent secretly, being used by the enemy, is thousands of times more powerful. So you see, if it's that powerful, the opposite must be just as powerful. Once I stop it, the person's like, oh. It's like step back in just a breath of air. I can breathe. It's not like somebody's standing on my chest. And they literally feel something is lighter, something is different. And they begin to respond. Now in that moment, God steps in and he moves ahead and he begins to work on that person. That loved one in your life, he begins to move in their life and begins to operate. And begins to turn their heart back to you. It's very, very exciting, very, very powerful. Many, many relationships are being healed as we speak as a result of this prayer. Are there any questions on, any thoughts, any questions on this theme of jealousy? I have one more topic I'd like to, but any questions about this one? Anybody at all? Perfect understanding?
Good explanation. Your question, what was it? I kept thinking anger. I wasn't thinking jealousy. Is there some connection with that?
We send out unlimited amounts of emotions. I just chose one that is very, very widely used by the enemy. We could go through all the emotions. Anger is definitely used. If I'm angry at someone else, that anger is being transmitted, and the people around me are going to feel that anger, and the enemy is going to use it against me. It all comes back against me. That's why Jesus says, you're angry, dump that anger before the sun goes down, because it's coming back at you in ways you can't even imagine. That is a great, great, great example. It's another huge way of destroying me. What I was speaking about was destroying relationships, but that anger will come back and destroy me. Because all the anger I feel gets radiated out and becomes amplified and comes back at me. And now I've got all this growing inside me, and that's where diseases come from, that's where anxiety, and you feel it in your gut, we all have felt it, and it starts to grow and manifest, and all kinds of diseases can come from this. Very, very real. Yes?
When you were speaking, I couldn't help but think of examples in my own life, the messages I'm sending to my son or my husband's age, because I can see in my mind's eye their response, and I know where it's coming from.
Right.
No matter how nice I am, what kind I am, I'm sending a message, you're not enough, I'm disappointed, I didn't do this. What is the prayer that you teach your clients to cut this, to send it to the cross, and to begin to make a difference, to be taking control of your emotions and making a difference?
So the question is, what do we do when we uncover this lie? When we uncover the emotion that we're sending out? First thing we do is we write an opposite to that lie. And so, if I'm sending out negative emotions to one of my children, I begin to send the opposite. I find the exact opposite. If I have a concern, let's say many, many emotions that we send to our children are actually concerns. I have a concern that my son is never going to get a job. And so I worry about this all the time. I'm concerned that my son is never going to get a job, never going to get ahead, never going to get a job. So that emotion, that concern, actually turns into a curse. Because now the enemy picks that up, and what all the son hears is, I will never get a job. And now we add on, I'm good for nothing, you're worthless, I'll never amount to anything. And what happens is the exact thing that you fear, that my son will never get a job, you are a major player of why it never takes place. A woman came in, she had a son who was 16 years old, and her son was failing in school. He had no friends. He felt he was bullied. He was failing everything he did. He was depressed. He was lonely. He was doing nothing. He was shut down. On and on and on. She had a whole page we listed of things that she told me about her son. And then we find out as we're talking through the sessions that when she was pregnant with this boy, she had an attack on her hip. We found it was all enemy attack, but her hip was under a massive attack. She couldn't even move, she couldn't walk, she couldn't even hold her baby. He had this fear, it started out as a concern. I will never have a relationship with my son because I can't hold him, I can't nurse him. These are all concerns. My son I'll never be able to play with my son. My son will never develop because I'm not playing with him. He'll never have friends because I can't take him on play dates with the other kids because I can't leave the house. My son will never be social because he never gets to be with other people. My son will never develop because I don't have the time to teach him. She went on and on, a page and a half of concerns, right? Motherly concerns that she thought she was so great at, being such a good mother. We found out as we went through, every single one of those concerns had become a reality. She was influencing him in a huge way. They had become curses. They had become curses because she actually began to believe as the fear turned into real life. It's like, see, you don't have any friends. Never realized that she was responsible in a big way, but it's like, you'll never have any friends. Now it turned into a lie, now it turns into a curse. You will never have any friends. And every single one of those was turning true. And so what did we do? We broke every one of those curses, and then we rewrote them into positive statements. You want to do something wonderful for your children, they don't even have to know you're doing it. You turn all your concerns, I challenge everyone in this room to write down a list of concerns that you have for somebody that you love. Just a concern, and I tell you it has become a fear and now has become, most likely become a curse. Break that, we will turn it into and say, I break that lie when I said my son will never get a job. And now you begin to send out, just pray every day this prayer. Just think positive blessings. My son is capable of having a wonderful job. He's going to get a great job. My daughter is going to marry a wonderful man. I believe it, I'm praying for it. I know that God is going to provide this wonderful, wonderful man. That message reaches your child. What happens when it reaches them? They begin to believe this as well. Instead of a negative, I'll never get a job, they're going to say, I'm capable of getting a wonderful job. I'm capable of marrying a wonderful woman. They begin to believe that, and they inspire towards that. It's not magic, it's not superstition. This is the way God designed it. Blessings, which what parents were supposed to be doing. Instead, many of us, out of our concerns, we curse our children. You'll never amount to anything. Right? This is the way my brother taught his 9-year-old son. I'm listening to this boy, never responded. My brother would say to him, Dominic, get ready for bed. No response. Maybe you can identify with this as parents. Dominic, get ready for bed. No response. Dominic, get ready for bed. Finally, the boy jumps up and moves. And then he yells at him, Dominic, you never listen. What was that?
Curse.
A curse. See, I spoke a definitive. This wasn't a maybe. It wasn't like, Dominic, sometimes you don't listen. This was, you never listen. Hear the word? Never, always, everyone. It's a lie. And the enemy picks it up and turns it into a curse. Guess what? That boy never listened. His prophecy came true. What he was breathing into that boy came true. We do this, you can think of 1,000 examples of how we do it. You can turn this around. That woman began to speak truths into that boy, and he began to change. She spent, and this is, remember, God multiplies it exponentially. You don't have to wait forever. She began to pray. She said, I'm going to go home and do this. And she spent an hour one day just praying, going through all of her concerns, turning them into truths, and breathing them into that boy. She said, I picked them up from school. I couldn't believe it. Now, every day she picks him up from school, he's angry and he's depressed and he just yells at her. He's so frustrated and angry and doesn't know why. Well, because of all the reasons I gave you, right? She said, I picked him up and he had a smile on his face. He was cheerful, and she said, and I just about passed out. The next day, I did it again the next day, and I picked him up and he was exactly the same. Just a coincidence, you see? Just a coincidence. After 1.5 years of this behavior, she begins to pray the truth. That's how fast God responds. I prayed with, there's one man that I prayed with. It's such a great story. He said he had 3 children and had a broken relationship with all 3. He hadn't heard from them in 2 years. Well, actually, he had spoken with them, but there was one in particular he hadn't spoken with in 2 years. And he said, what can I do? I can't get them here to pray with you. I said, you don't have to. We just break what you're sending into them, and let's see what happens. We began to break all these emotions, and they were all emotions that came from him when he was a boy. Rejection from his father, powerlessness, unworthiness, low self-esteem. He was just sending them all into his children, which made it, there was no reason why they would want to respond to somebody sending me this stuff. We began to break these emotions, and he began to send positive truths into them, reading them every day. He's sitting there in my office in the chair one day, and the phone rings. And he looks at it, and he jumps up, he said, it's her! It's her! And he answers it, and it's the daughter he hadn't heard from 2 years. Just a coincidence, you see, that we have been praying and praying truth and positiveness into this girl. And she says, you know, Dad, I haven't seen you for a couple of years. How about if me and the kids come and visit you? He burst into tears. This man is a believer. And so he spends every day sending truths. And that all relationships have been restored with his children. They have never seen me. They don't even know I exist. That's the effect we can do as parents. Very, very powerful. Any other questions? There's nothing that God desires more than the desires of our heart. Because where do you think those desires came from? He is more about it than we are. He is going to fulfill every one of those desires. And the main one is in this room of having relationships with each other and relationships with our children. He wants that more than you can imagine.
What's your experience about the father-child relationship? Most of your stories started with a broken relationship with the father. Is that your experience in your counseling too, that a lot of it revolves about the father-child relationship?
Only every single one, yes.
You experienced every single one?
Yeah, I used to say that 90% of all people have issues with their father, but in reality it's 100%. But you have to listen to my last talk because it's all about that talk, the role of the father. Yeah, it was the beginning of, there's more to come on that. I've developed it even more. But it's very, very amazing, amazing discovery that God has shown me about how so much of it goes back to the father's role. But I could go on for hours about that. The thoughts I have came from many, many, many hours of sharing with people and just listening and listening to their stories. And you begin to see patterns over and over and over again. The enemy has only so many tricks, you see, because he doesn't know that he's using them on you, and then you have no idea. So he can use the same one on every one of us, and he does. There has not been one person out of the thousands of people I have counseled with that have not experienced this trick of jealousy. There are other ones, so if you invite me back, I will go on to other topics. I have a whole stories of wiles of the enemy The more that you can learn about his tricks, the more that you will be that much experience of how to ward him off. How to take thought captives, how do we do that? Many, many techniques. What I would like to share, in the times to come, is how do we overcome these techniques of the enemy? How do we become victorious, and how do we stay in victory? That's what I'd like to share, because that is my role. When people come in, I don't just heal them of negative emotions. We have to change behavior so that they can stay in victory. Remember, most come in, they're in a state of negativity. They're in a place of real despair. We have to get them up into victory. And so there are many, many techniques to get you there and to keep you there. And those are things we can share in the future. So I'd like to come back, and you come back too.